Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashrothi, and this is the Eve Universe Show CSM 16 continuing coverage with our interviews, this time with Broodin. Before we begin, how you doing, Broodin?
Doing fine, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Awesome. I am doing good. Today, you actually, maybe it's important, depending on how the rest of this interview goes, but I guess I should say at the onset, this is kind of the end of a marathon for me. It's the fourth interview of the day. So I will do my absolute best to give you the platform that you deserve. And I think I can do it, but wanted to put that out on the outset. But before we begin, let's go ahead and go over the rules like we always do, which is that I take 50 minutes to go over the candidacy with the candidate and have their candidacy post in front of me. That's how many times I can say candidate in like one short period of time. My job is to explore and like provide the best presentation of what the candidate has to offer and the best framing of their position, so that way you, my viewers, can look at all of my interviews that have the same format and make a good decision. After I take 50 minutes to explore the space myself, I make sure to give 10-minute warning for him to see if there's any final things that he wants to say or anything I have missed, anything that I may not have covered. And when we are both satisfied at about an hour, then we wrap it up and I send it over to YouTube, and it goes onto the playlist of all of the other candidates. So that way you guys can watch it and become informed, because the most important thing is, of course, that you vote and be informed and be involved and seek good representation for what you want, because the CSM is only as good as we make it. So with all that being said, Broodin, I'm just going to start with the first thing first. Just in case somebody sees it later on, you are the first bee to step into the breach. We've had a couple of dinos up there, but and the reason why I bring that up in particular is because when the CSM candidacy list first was presented, the fact that there were so many Imperium candidates was noted, and I would say that the accusations of Imperium control of the CSM are literally predate the name Imperium. So I guess before we go into anything else like that, how I actually want to ask my own question on the outset. The other piece of it that stood out to me is that of all of the Imperium that we're running, which are like 6, I believe, you all are in Karma Fleet. And that stood out to me as particularly interesting. So with all that said, I kind of wanted to give you an opportunity to unpack that for me and kind of help shed some light to the mystery. Is this seriously like all of the Imperium people that are involved happen to be the New Bro helpers? Is there a conspiracy going on? Is there a movement to push people towards Karma Fleet that people outside of the Imperium are not aware of? Help me out.
No, honestly, the best way to describe this is actually by completely detracting from it. Last summer, you remember back when we had the COVID kind of a break between the COVID shutdowns around July, August, we were able to go out and, restaurants opened up for a short time, their outside patios and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I sat down and I had the opportunity to sit with Merkel Chen and discussed what was going on with Karma Fleet University. It was still a very young, very, very, moldable corporation, and I was kind of doing my own thing. And he told me, don't even ask. You're doing good things. You're making good decisions. As long as you're making good decisions, we don't even need to talk about it. When you start making bad decisions is when we'll sit down and have a discussion. And I think the reason you see so many Karma Fleet is that's been Merkel Chen's approach to everything, leadership style. He allows people to do, he motivates people to try new things and put effort towards things. If you believe in something, work towards it, and you'll probably achieve it. And I think that motivating, empowering spirit really has picked up pace within Karma Fleet and has driven a lot of us to follow our own path, even though obviously I'm probably the lowest on the pecking order. I still believe and I still aspire, and by following what Merck has, kind of been preaching to me, I drive forward and I try new things, and I applied for CSM knowing that I'm going to have to make my own path, but I'm going to do the best I can and see what comes of it.
So, I I'm not totally crazy though. Merkel Chan is also running this year, right?
He is. He
So
is.
you're running to be in conjunction with Merkel Chan, right?
To sort of an
Like,
extent. I'm not counting on much of the Imperium vote because I know I'm low on the question mark list.
right, but I mean, I assume that you're not suggesting that they would vote you in above Merkel Chan. So like
No, absolutely
in your
not.
world, you and Merkel Chan are both representing, like that's what you're asking to see manifest by running to the
That is.
CSM.
That is.
It's implied. Okay, cool.
I think Merck does a fantastic job, and I think I could work alongside him very well.
Cool. And so, given the fact that he is your mentor, it seems based on what you've been describing, is that a fair characterization based on what you said?
I every week he gets up and does Saturday Night Swarm. Every couple of days he's on Twitch streaming for everybody.
Right.
He's a good role model to follow as far as activity in the game.
Absolutely. Sweet. He's a great dude. But so yes, you would describe him as a mentor character for you. That seems like an
I
accurate.
look
Okay.
up to him. I mean,
Awesome.
a lot of people do.
Yeah, I don't like to put descriptions on somebody without giving them an opportunity to contest it if necessary. But with all that said, why vote for you then? Why run? Like why is it just like the Goon Swarm believe that they have enough votes that it's like who else besides Merkel Chan and you're trying to fight for that number 2 spot? Is that like really how this works? Or
No,
like what value do you bring to the table as a person like seeking somebody's vote? We assume that Merkel Chan's going to be in. You want somebody's vote instead of somebody else. It needs to matter. What do you bring to the table to a CSM that still has Merkel Chan in it?
what I bring to the table is the knowledge and experience that I have both in leadership in a small organization. Because I'm not one of these guys that I joined the game and I joined because of Karma Fleet. I didn't even understand Karma Fleet existed until 2018. I started playing in 2015. Where I draw a lot of my experience
Uh oh.
in the comparison between that and how Karma Fleet actually runs, and what separates the two and how to start bringing those closer together.
Oh, oh. Why did it do that? Okay, there we go. All right. Sorry. I had to deal with a minor technical glitch at the same time as I was trying to open up your CSM post while you were talking. But I appreciate you clarifying that. Um, I guess so. That goes back to the previous thing that I point out, though, which is that like Karma Fleet is the new bro organization of Goon Swarm. It's not the central corporation that like everybody's in, right? It's not like the Dreadit or whatever that would be in test, as last I checked, unless something fundamentally has changed in the Imperium. So why are all these other guys Karma? Like you said that you're part of this small thing. You believe in Karma Fleet. If that's true, why is all these other guys also in Karma Fleet and seeking to
Just look
represent
at
them?
Karma Fleet's size. Karma Fleet is the biggest corporation in the Imperium by far, and straight out and point blank, when you put a lot of talent into a small area and in a compression chamber where you're motivated and people are incentivized to try new things and experiment and put forth effort, you pull a lot of leadership theory out of that.
So would you say that it's fair to say that this migration to Karma Fleet was because like the the like Karma Fleet came out of a time in which all of the empires, or the null blocks as you want to call them, were working on their own solution to the problem. And at that moment in time, the value of new bros and numbers were becoming more important than ever before. And Goon Swarm has historically had good new bro focus, the Swarm, right? But at this time when like brave newbies proved to the world how much a bunch of new bros could do in the world. And likewise, we have things like Pandemic Horde and Karma Fleet, and likewise that start to crop up as everybody wanted to have their own batch of new bros to have. And so what this seems to suggest is that over time, that experiment has become now so successful that it is almost consumed the rest of Goonswarm, and has kind of consumed the fascination of some of the more active players, the people who would run for CSM, and so they've migrated to Karma Fleet. Is that would that?
I'd say that's probably about 50% accurate. I think a lot of what you see as far as new generation, people who joined Karma Fleet when they were newer, or they migrated to Karma Fleet and they've grown exponentially in just motivation over time. I see Karma Fleet, and I've watched from the outreach side. I work with the recruitment team as an outreach member, and that means sitting in the public channel answering questions, and that's how Karma Fleet University originally got its roots, was out of that program and Merck's desire to have lower turnover. But seeing the motivation, the positive energy that comes out of the leadership of Karma Fleet is really what causes, in my opinion, and it's just Broodin talking, it causes a lot of people to say, you know what, I'm going to try. I'm going to put forward 100% and see what happens. And that leads to a lot. The grand experiment, as you have illustriously referred to it, and it posted on our forums, is that exact term, has been,
That's
in
an
my
accident, by
opinion,
the
a
way.
resounding success.
Awesome, awesome. That's great. Wow, that's I don't know if that's a great minds think alike and fools never differ or whatever, but we'll
I think
find
it's
out
a
eventually.
self-fulfilling prophecy more than anything else.
That's true.
Karma Fleet was started with the mindset of, we're going to take a Brave Newbies, New Bro style corporation, but we're going to mix it with enough veteran players that enjoy teaching and helping, that it really creates its own dynamic atmosphere. And that has just been critical in my personal growth in the game. So I will always be loyal to Karma Fleet for that.
So, do you agree that uh, to have an effective CSM, or the most effective CSM you can have, uh, rather, do you agree that diversity is key to having an effective CSM?
I think diversity of thought more so than diversity of anything else, because as has been said many times, if everyone's thinking alike, no one's really thinking.
Right. So, and again, so to that end, if somebody brings uh, the table, you said your experiences with this small, your institutional effort as doing Karma Fleet, but I also believe that there are many other candidates that are alliance leaders, big, medium, small, and could bring that perspective as well, without also kind of adding some redundancy to the situation, and therefore bringing like a whole. You also get like somebody who brought it was in low sec the whole time that you've been in null sec, so you get that as well. And when you only have 10 spots, every spot is important. So
Can I ask you a question though?
sure.
What do you think is the biggest element lacking between small groups and large groups in EVE Online? Would it be
Organizational
PvP,
tools.
organizational tools? If you pull up pancakecat.com, which sounds like a hilarious website, and mind you, it is, that's my primary purpose, is trying to give tools to new groups that don't have the IT support that Goon Swarm or Pandemic or Legacy have. Trying to, one of the things that I would primarily push for is for CCP to actually develop their own SSO token reader, because the only ones available lead back to the Black Ops sections of the big alliances. So there's really no safe way to even do background checks on your prospective members without having a security breach of your own in the process. So by CCP and building their own process of reading their own system, which shouldn't be all that difficult, maybe 20, 30 hours, something simple, basic, but worthwhile for use, you'll be able to do background checks the same as a major group. You just need to know how to do it effectively.
I appreciate everything that you had to say, but I will confess that I was a bit distracted by the fact that before this, I asked you whether or not there was anything else I should have prepared, and you said no. You buried the lead
Sorry,
that you
sorry.
had pancakecat.com. Oh, this should be like your defining issue. This is awesome.
I've loved that darn cat since I found it online a long time ago, and it's just and you see it hanging in my living room because it's part of my decor. I it's cute, it's adorable, it's something I control people with, and it's not going to get anybody in trouble with their spouse or their boss if it pops up on a computer later on as part of search string. So it works for me.
really good. Uh, anyway, so um, what you're really like, one of the things I like to say to null block candidates is that like you're locking in your vote with your block is your business, right? Because I know that null blocks have their own politics, as it were, about all of this, and how you guys handle your affairs is your way. You come on this interview and you talk to me because you want, presumably because you would like people who are not part of your core block to consider you as a candidate as well, right? So to that end, um, is there any reason why a non-null block candidate, a Highsec candidate, or sorry, a non-null block player, maybe a player that lives in Highsec that may not feel that nullsec is a necessary like place to go, help that person feel that you might be able to represent them, or at least not be somebody who will push a counter agenda against them?
Fair question. And my response would be a very simple one. Look at what I do. I spend about 90% of my time in Highsec, running Karma Fleet University. I spend about 90% of my time administrating from when the corporation started out as a very small 20-person group to now we're almost 1,500. That is what I do. I'm here to help. I try to teach. I try to improve the game lives for anybody that's around me, and enriching the game environment for everyone and trying to level the playing field without nuking it, because I think that's one of CCP's biggest problems is they see the balance patches as a nerf this, nerf that. Okay, well, if we give tools to the younger, newer groups that don't have them and don't have any way to effectively acquire them, then we're effectively starting to balance the playing field without having to nerf anything. So by giving additional tools and resources that otherwise would be limited to those with a 30-person or even 5-person information technology team, you're starting to balance the scales. And that's what I would say really encompasses what I'm looking to do.
Is this your um how long have you been playing?
I've been playing since August of 2015.
Okay. And then so you've been part of that's basically you've been
I
were you in
spent
Karma
about
Fleet from
half
the
my time in
beginning?
Goons. No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
I
Yeah, that's
didn't
right. You
join
came
Karma
in.
Fleet until September, the end of September 2018 is when I joined Karma Fleet. So I spent about I'm about half mix between small group and large group, and I've spent the majority of the last year and a half in Highsec.
Okay. So what is the purpose and value of Highsec then?
Highsec is a fantastic place to learn, and for those who choose to live there, it's a place to grow, it's a place to learn, it's a place to play the game. There's a lot of competitive things that go on in Highsec, whether it's mission running, whether it's ganking. There's a lot of things that happen in Highsec that kind of get swept under the carpet because they don't get covered by the news when these big fights happen.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason why I ask that in particular, usually I ask somebody like, what's the purpose and value of their own space? Uh, I'm kind of concerned about asking nullsecers that because I feel like they can pontificate upon that probably a little bit too well. But at the same time, you know, the concern would be that you feel that that Highsec is a place that people should be driven out of, because when Highsecers who are worried about null, like if you were worried about power block of CSM, if you're talking about that boogeyman, as a person who would be like a Highsecer that'd be afraid of that boogeyman, the manifestation of that would be that like these guys just think that people should be bullied out of Highsec because that's how to get people to move out, or all those kinds of things. So like that's the reason why I wanted to explore what your perception of Highsec was in particular. So I
Well,
appreciate you exploring that.
when I first started the game, I started off and I realized very quickly that it was not like World of Warcraft where I had come from in most aspects. And I started doing transportation work. I worked myself into a freighter and started hauling around Highsec. Eventually found a real life buddy of mine who was my squad leader. My first tour in Iraq was in a corporation, so I joined that. They had a power vacuum of knowledge and leadership, and even though I knew nothing about the game, I kind of got pulled into that. And we spent time in Highsec building and growing, and then we eventually decided as a communal group that we wanted to try something different. So we went out to Deep Null and lived there for a little while and bounced around the universe. But ultimately, the way that I look at things is whatever space you live in should be fun for you. Whether it's Highsec, Lowsec, Nullsec, wormholes, each section should be enriching and have value to the people who live there, because this is a sandbox game. One of the pinnacle points of everything, whether it's my campaign, whether it's just the game in general, is that this game is written and built by the players. The player stories is what ultimately matters, and what gets written down in these Empires of Eve books, what gets written down all over the internet, what the stories that people tell. Nobody tells the epic stories of, well, I found this mission and followed it and did. It's like the opening of the AQ40 gates in World of Warcraft. It's a fantastic story, but nobody has a choice. In Eve, that your choice is where you want to live, and no matter where you choose to live, each should have value, and it should feel like you're at home.
Excellent. I like that answer. It brings to mind though a thought. First of all, if you think that nobody does that, then maybe you should watch. No, I'm just watch more of my stuff. No, I'm just kidding. I don't actually literally go into missions. That would be very hard. I would confess. But so nullsec is a very uh troublesome place at the moment, design wise. A lot of people are not happy with how it is. Some people have not been happy with it for some time. Few people are super happy with it. There's currently an ongoing war, so like changing the SOV system tomorrow would be a mistake. Don't change the SOV system tomorrow, CCP, please. But
Please, CCPs, don't do that. Don't
but
do it.
knock on wood or something. But like, I assume that one of your reasons why you want to be on CSM is to help CCP make a better nullsec as part of this larger effort, because you see nullsec as being kind of the one of the, if not the apex of the game, one of the apexes of our storytelling capabilities within the game, right?
That is a very, very good description, because the apex of the game for someone like me is actually not nullsec. The apex of the game for me is actually pulling in a brand new player, teaching them how to survive, and watching them make their own way in the game. That is ultimately the pinnacle for me. And what that bleeds off to is understanding that in a sandbox, wherever you want to make your mark is where you make your mark. It's not a matter of high sec, low sec, null sec, wormholes. It's wherever you want to enjoy it is where you should be able to. And in that, null sec, yes, there is some, just there are mechanics out there. Everything is up for grabs. Anything is destructible. 1DQ, if enough effort was put, could be razed to the ground, every structure destroyed. The only thing that is permanent in nullsec is the NPC gates and the star. That's it. And some of the planets. But otherwise, the stories of Eve are often written out in nullsec, and I think, yes, it needs some definite balance passes.
Did you, did you just say that the two things that are stable are the gates, NPC stargates, and the stars?
Yeah,
You're
for the
trolling me,
most
right?
part.
No, because like the Triglavians took the stars, and now today they
No,
announced new stargates.
the individual stars, and the new stargates are the only new stargate is affecting Stain. The other
That's
ones are
fair.
affecting the Empire space, low sec and high sec.
I get your okay. That's fair, but
No,
I,
but my point being that everything is up for grabs.
yeah,
There is no NPC stations. There are no Concord. There is no low sec gate guns. It's very similar to wormhole life, except for we have local in nullsec, and we have the ability to sino jump from system to system. But the the ability for one group to be completely wiped out of their space exists, and it exists in a very strong way. Look how long the first World War B, Casino War, whatever you want to call it, over the course of 2 months, Goonswarm was straight out wiped out of the North. And it doesn't take long if you're not protecting your stuff, and you're not, if you see a bad situation, you withdraw. Everything can burn to the ground in a month.
right. Wait, well, I mean, asset safety kind of undermines that, which brings me to a null set question, which is, what is your feelings about that particular fact?
Asset safety. hmm, I like the concept of it. I like the application of it. I think that I'm not sure if it needs to be 100% of your assets or if it should be a moderate portion. I really don't know. It's not something I've really considered much because my focus has always been on the new player experience more so than the nuances of asset safety. So that's not an area I'm actually comfortable with discussing. And part of being a candidate is understanding that there's some things that I don't know and I don't fully have rationalized, and I'm not going to sit and run my mouth and say, well, this should change, that should change, when I don't have a full picture of what the actual problem is and sitting down and thinking about it in the course of my studies.
That's a solid answer. I mean, like, part of being in the CSM is being able to state when, like, not my thing. There's somebody else
Being
that.
willing to say I don't know,
Yep.
having that willingness and the ability to do so.
So let's talk a little bit about new player experience then. You want to be on the CSM to help out with the new player experience. CCP has been iterating on the new player experience um, pretty much continuously, but even more aggressively recently. Um, Especially in the last 2 years, there's been this newfound like interest in increasing retention in a way that wasn't before. Uh, what are they missing that you being on the CSM will help finally
You
finally
want to
bring this
see,
thing
you
home?
want me to throw another wrench at you? Pull
No.
up the website community.eveonline.com.
Oh, that's good. That's fine. I can do that one.
It's a depressing, sad website.
Oh,
It's
you
very sad.
barely need to tell me this because I have to go here for the world news. So you're not wrong with with where you're going, but you're kind of cheating. All right. So this is the
Click on the community page. The community page.
yeah. Oops. All right. Yeah. Not to mention the fact that this is actually it's really hard to get to this page, community.eveonline.com from eveonline.com. It's not very clear. This is part of my larger rant and the fact that there's even less of a clear path to get to the world news, but I digress. The community page, what about it?
What on there talks about the current community? What stories does it tell? I mean, something as simple as the Broadcast for Reps Discord should be on the community page somewhere.
That's true.
Community assets, Eve University would be a stellar candidate to be have something on this page. Having, and again, another concept of mine that is there's no such thing as a new idea in an 18-year-old game, but a rehashed idea is
Ah,
put a put a system in place similar to the structure browser. CCP loves to make their own rules. So they set 15 to 20 different contingents, and corporations have to fight to freaking get in there. And then you promote those groups as new player friendly, whatever CCP standards they decide to put in place, and you promote those. And you get new players involved with the community itself, not a virtual AI, because you can get that in any video game, not a freaking, just a long, drawn out tutorial. Get them involved with real people, whether it's Eugen Moon down in Eve University, get them involved with Brave Newbies, Pandemic, Counterfeit University, somebody, and tell them along the way, hey, every group is unique. Every group has their own culture. And if you join one of these groups, you're much more likely to stay in the game and succeed than if you try and fight it alone for your first little while. And once they've spent some time in a new player group, I've seen it hands down, the retention rates skyrocket. The people that come to us and are active in our community, active on our Discord, they come and BS with us, they stay around. It's the people that we meet and, oh, well, I don't really like talking. And they don't say anything. They just wander off doing their own path.
right.
We need to try and catch them and provide a safety net of actual human beings before we sit there and trust everybody's future to an AI program.
That's a really good answer. And I want to, this is not a gotcha situation because one of the biggest things is that like CCP is historically pretty bad at communicating things and putting things out there. So if you weren't aware of this, it is absolutely not your fault. But are you aware of the new the new Academy, Eve Academy website?
I have looked at it. I have not really dug far into it. I've
Awesome.
admittedly, it's been softball season and my family is just running from place to place.
Absolutely. It's one of those, it's like, it was last week. That's what I was trying to say. Like, if you blinked, you missed it. So, more like good news, it actually really seems like, I think that there's a piece of it where I don't know how their web dev works or how their websites are more easier to update versus others, but it really seems like they are putting in their effort to make this happen. And so, whether or not you're on the CSM, I actually recommend that you reach out because I know that CSP Aurora and some of the others worked with Ashy and probably and others to make this. And so they've been receiving feedback and working with others about it. So I strongly recommend you get involved with this because it seems pretty cool. And I don't just say that because they showcase our group. Uh, I think they actually mentioned Karma Fleet. We'll see in a few seconds. But what, all that said, I'll turn that around and ask. You don't need to be on the CSM for that, though. With that in mind, how do you feel that being on the CSM will empower you to help out CCP in a way that you just being able to contribute your guidance just as a person who's DMing a GM or whatever, or like the devs can do without an NDA or whatever?
I'm gonna do whatever I can. This is my favorite hobby. I mean, you see me. I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt at freaking 10 o'clock at night in my time zone. I do this because I love it. I enjoy this game. I enjoy the community that surrounds it. I want to see it survive. So I'm going to work hard regardless of where I'm at. And, being on the CSM simply means that you have better inroads to make sure that different topics are brought up in conversation. Being on CSM is, in my mind, it's a good avenue when you have a post-it note of, hey, we need to work on 3 things this quarter. What do we want to work on? To make sure that new player development is pushed towards the forefront. Make sure that our community development is pushed towards the forefront, because I, frankly, there's so many good resources in the community, and God, that looks beautiful. I love that website.
It's really
But
good.
that's fantastic.
So,
That's so much better. It used to be that the community page was nothing but a Plex sale, and I'm sure you remember those days.
well, I mean, technically, we just went to it. It's still there. It's still kind of, but, but I
But
will.
this exists.
I do want to say that, like, I didn't want to say it until I verified, just in case. But Karma Fleet is a recommended player corporation on this group for new players. So to that end, what is your position in Karma Fleet now? Are you like, what would you say that you are within the group?
In Karma Fleet Actual, I work as a member of the outreach team. I answer questions for the recruitment team, and that's about it. My main responsibility has been caretaker and dean of Karma Fleet University.
So, so there you go. Regardless of block politics or anything like that, Karma Fleet, which is listed, whatever, is listed as a player corporation recommended by CCP as a new bro corporation, and not for nothing, whatever we want to say about politics, Karma Fleet has proven to be incredibly successful at engaging players and keeping players. I mean, like, as you pointed out, so successful that you kind of consumed the swarm, which is almost bearing the lead and worth a whole different discussion outside of a CSM interview. But I think that that's telling, and you are a key piece in the training group of what is largely becoming one of the most important training organizations in Eve. That's saying something right there. Uh, Anything you want to add to that point?
It's it's kind of you to say that. It's a lot of kind words. Thank you.
I mean, that was just me piecing together facts. I have no idea how good or bad you are. I haven't been in any of your classes, but I will say that I assume that you wouldn't be in your position still if it was otherwise.
I'd like to think so, but it's definitely a team effort. We've got a very strong team behind us, and it's a, it's a group effort more than anything. But I'm very proud to take point on it.
But it brings me to a question though, which is that, like, especially um with election, what is it called, term limits. I guess I'll just ask you directly: is this less about getting elected and more about establishing yourself to replace Merkel Chan as the CSM candidate when Merkel Chan can no longer run?
I am no,
Nope.
no, not even in the ballpark. I that his shoes are too big for me to fill, in my opinion, and I couldn't imagine stepping into that role. Um,
But you did earlier allude to the
gosh,
fact that you're not necessarily expecting to be elected this cycle.
no, I mean, who is? When you're coming out of left field, and you have to have reasonable expectations, and I think that's another important part of being a candidate is understanding that disappointment is a thing, and you may not get elected the first term around. You may have to establish a presence, make yourself known, and then the community, if they like your ideas, will say, "Hey, I like this guy. He did decent. Maybe I'll vote for him the next term." And that's just a part of life. And you can't give up the first time you have a setback.
That's solid. And to be clear, a lot of people run for the CSM, with the understanding that it could potentially take multiple runs. So even if you were to say, "Yep, you nailed it. That's what I was doing," I'd just be like, "That's pretty smart." So, but I understand that as much as you respect the man, you are also, your own person in your own right, and have interests that not only are outside of probably his major focus, but sounds like you may even disagree with him on at least some things here and there, which is healthy, I'm sure. So I didn't want to, like, imply such a
We
thing.
disagree on some points. We do disagree on some points. We're all human beings. We have our own viewpoints, and not to splice words, but he's an incredible human being. I have a massive amount of respect for Merck, and working with him is something that would be like all the CSMs an honor and a privilege. because at some point you have to have some humility and understand that to be elected, you have to have a certain amount of respect within the community, and that's something that takes time and effort to build. He's been elected, and overwhelmingly, he has a massive amount of respect built within the community, and that can't be shouldered easily.
Absolutely. No, uh that's a very good and diplomatic answer. uh
Well, I did spend some time at Fort Leavenworth, where about 80% of that installation is majors and above and their families. And when you get called to something and you're just dealing with general day-to-day activities, and you have somebody that outranks you by, not only are they an officer, but a dozen pay grades, you have to learn to be diplomatic in some sense and be able to get along with people, build a rapport quickly, have a decent amount of respect, and understand that they're a human being underneath all of it as well. And if you respect people for who they are and you respect them for being a human being, then that goes a long way.
well stated. Well stated. uh There's a noob in the chat. CCP Swift is saying that Karma Fleet is recruiting. Wanted to verify that that was true.
Karma Fleet is almost always recruiting. Karma
Almost
Fleet
always.
University, they did shut down at the beginning of this war for about a month, and then the demand was so outrageous that the directorate opted to open it up again. And Karma Fleet's recruiting. Karma Fleet University is always recruiting. We love to help. That's what a lot of our instructors enjoy more than anything else in the game, is to help new players. Honestly, new players, just speaking to all of you maybe in the chat or maybe listening to this, you are one of the best resources in this game for us old I hate calling myself old, but old players who have been around and have all these stories and experience. You give us reason to be energetic, cheerful, and relive some of the fun stories that we've had and teach somebody something. That is incredible. I love the sound on somebody's face when they get on their first kill mail, or
Absolutely.
hey,
Oh yeah.
I built this on my own. It's a freaking incredible feeling, and you guys make it happen for me. So that's where I have to shamelessly plug my own beliefs. I love hanging out with new players. That's where I derive my happiness from.
And I really appreciate you articulate that because I've been doing a lot of jumping in on new bro streams and helping them out. And you mentioned earlier that like your end game is helping people out. And I always say like the end game of Eve is everywhere, but that takes it to a whole nother level. And you're absolutely right, right? Like I don't care if I kill the Titan, that'd be cool. I'll tell people about it. It'll be a thing I say and like yay. But like getting a dude, I took a new bro that had less than a day and he got a kill in low sec and made it through a Tama gate camp. And then we had another new bro that took a Nutristin that I gave him and beat Dr. Spod. So in a 1v1 twice. Let me tell you,
Nice.
that is my Eve endgame, man. Like taking somebody and saying like, here, because I like to like the puzzle for those of us who have like sort of fascinated with the Eve puzzle and have in some ways solved it. The new endgame is to then go and take that solution and like help people solve it for themselves, right? It's like the enlightened that turns around and goes back to help, the Buddha. Okay, never mind. That's making us sound way too hoity-toity. But either way, I totally feel what you're saying, and I really appreciate you bringing that up because that actually that really resonated with me.
It's what I enjoy. That's why I say, no matter where you're at in this game, this is a sandbox game. The more people understand and appreciate that, the more the community element starts to funnel to the top, and the more stories we have to tell. And it's the stories that the players make, because everybody's gone through Ice Crown Citadel. Everybody, a lot of people watch videos on the AQ40 gate, and a lot of people live through it. Not everybody's been through that first, flying a fleet of rookies and frigates and going out and just tackling something for the fun of it. I had so much fun when Karma Fleet University was in Teshi. We'd take fleets out to Brave Space down to GE Tech and just sit on their jump gate. Didn't even shoot the darn thing. We just sat there until they'd come and bring something to smite us with. And it was the funnest thing ever. I mean, maybe we'd get a frigate kill out of it and we'd all die horribly, but it was just fun. And that is as much end game to me as a Titan battle, and I enjoy both.
That's right. Sometimes we all get so wrapped up min-maxing and telling each other what is a good and bad idea that we lose track of like just going out and having some fun and where like the stories really come from.
It's a sandbox. Why? Give us the sand, give us a couple of molds, and we'll. Honestly, if CCP is in the channel, and it looks like they are, there's enough bad blood in the game. We don't need a reason to fight. Just give us the tools to do it with. We'll fight each other forever.
Right. And as I say, if we wish to have a sandbox and have it be a true sandbox, then we got to be willing to build some castles. And it's people like you with Eve University that are building those castles for people. And that is incredibly important for us to not just put the onus on CCP or whatever.
Yep. And that's at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. The stories are ours to build. The castles are ours to build, and the sand castles are there to be knocked over. And all along the way, we get stories out of it. And those stories are fun to trade with new players, with old players. So it makes this community what it is. It's a vibrant, lively community, and I want to make sure that that spirit of it gets pushed to the forefront.
That's an awesome sentiment. I am running low on time, but I've kind of given. I've interviewed a few candidates that are part of the war so far, and I think I've given them all kind of an opportunity, and I think I'm going to formalize it at this point. But like, I was thinking about it, and this war is not only bigger than a lot of nullsec wars, but it also has been going on now for quite some time, long enough that like we often say like there's a lot of people that this is their first CSM. They don't know much about, they've never voted before. This is their first year in the game, and in this year in particular, like people only know this very warped perception of things that comes from the war. Like propaganda is fun, but the polarization of things has caused on both sides members of people that are running for test, people that are running for Imperium, whoever else. There's a whole bunch of baggage that these players may not even know who the heck you are. They've only heard these like things back and forth, and I hate that. So I want to give you an opportunity to just speak to that for a little bit. For people who have never been aware of the Imperium prior to this war and don't know it outside of the context of this war or whatever people have said about it, or whatever they've seen on talking stations or whatever. I want to give you an opportunity to talk to those people.
So you want me to explain the Imperium?
Well, I mean, not totally,
do we
but
have
like
another 2 hours?
No, we're getting dangerously close to the 10-minute bookmark. But like, no, I mean, just briefly though, like help people understand why, like, whatever piece of the propaganda you want to try to undermine, but like why you're not the big bad that they might have heard or whatever it is.
It all comes down to perception and how you want to view things. Because if you view it from who's the richest, who's the wealthiest, who was the largest single block in the game, then Imperium was, the big bad. We're not the boogeyman under the carpet, though. One of the things you'll find is with any community in this game, I had the honor and privilege of being pulled by one of the CCP staff and through our Diplo team into an interview with, and I did an interview with PC Gamer News, and was in there with Gobbins, was in there with Eugen Moon, representative from Brave and Ranger Gamma from our University staff. And regardless of anything, one of the biggest takeaways from that entire thing was my statement that and I kind of referenced, Gobbins and the Brave representative. I said, you know what, we'll fight like cats and dogs. We can have vendettas in game, and it's fun to fight about. It's fun to actually have somebody you don't like in a game like this, because it is a game about war and conflict and conquest. But at the end of the day, if Gobbins walked into Vegas and I happened to be there, I'd buy him a drink any day. And same with anybody from Braves, same, PGL, Villy, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, they're helping to enrich my game environment by providing hostile content. Otherwise, it would just get dry and boring. So at the end of the day, as a new player to the game, when you see these big organizations and the propaganda that comes out of them, it's wonderful, it's hilarious. Some of it's just plain out the wall. But remember at the end of the day that there's human beings behind that, and we're all playing the same video game. And some of the best stories that come out of these wars, and the bad blood that gets rooted in these wars will carry it for the next 18 years through courses of conflict. And in a game about building stuff, industry fuels warfare, and warfare fuels the need for industry. We need both. You need destruction and building to keep the ecosystem healthy. So don't think of war as a bad thing in this context. It's just reshuffling resources and blowing up a whole lot of stuff that we had freaking squirreled away for a rainy day.
That's a very good point. I will also throw out that as much as some people may disagree, it is actually true that the transition and change to the name Imperium was part of a serious and concerted effort by Imperium leadership and membership to change their culture. And as an outside observer, I think that over the years we can now admit that a change occurred. People can argue about what is there, but like the Imperium that it is today is not the Imperium that a lot of the accusations or the bad, you know, uh, the things that they're known for comes from a time
Every
before.
everybody loves to bring up the wizard hat incident at
Right.
FanFest, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. I'll say this much. If you are a grown adult and you can look me in the eyes and tell me that you've never gotten drunk and said stupid shit, then I'll shake your hand and I'll buy you a drink. But
Absolutely.
we've all done it. We've all gotten drunk. We've all said dumb shit. He just happened to be at the first commercialized Eve Fest where it became a real big public incident. That's the long and short of it.
That is true. But it is also true that the goons, like in game, a long time, had. We're
It
not
was a
here to
it was
ruin the game. We're here to ruin your game, right? Like,
That was
but
the culture for most of the blocks, though. That was a culture for most,
my
and the early 2000s were a dark age for the internet. Let's just face
absolutely.
facts.
The point that I'm trying to get to is that Karma Fleet came after the cultural change, which means regardless of how you feel about that stuff, if we can cut through the cynicism at all, Karma Fleet really does represent uh, a newer blood, and this newer Imperium, I think, actually does engage players very well, and they're out there doing things, and they exploring other aspects of the game besides just null blocks and all that stuff. And I'm not 100% sure what's going on behind the walls, but I see that effort, and it definitely is there, and so it is worth calling that out as you represent Karma Fleet and um, whatever. So I wanted to throw that in there. But do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap this up? Did I
I think
cover it?
you've
Did I
covered
miss
it
anything?
very, very accurately, but I just want to add one follow on to what you said with that. The one time I've really gotten a thumbs up from Mittens on anything, because I really don't talk to the guy outside of when he drops into SNS or drops into comms and just shoots the shit with us, was when I was happened to be on the Meta show and I made the comment, we do what we do in Karma Fleet University because you can be a very successful Eve player and never be in a block. You can never be a part of a corporation. You can be a fantastic solo player, but to be in a part of the community, you have to know how to play Eve. So that's what our focus is. And he even just, it was just a straight out head nod, and he looked like he wanted to throw something through the screen, big thumbs up, whatever. But the culture has definitely changed from what it was even when I started the game and when I learned what Goonswarm was. It's a more positive and enriching environment, and I think the number of people applying to CSM from Karma Fleet is evidence of that.
Right. So your argument is that the high number from Karma Fleet shouldn't be cynically looked at as goon takeover, but merely looked at as like, well,
It's a
dude,
list of options.
why don't you have 7 people inspired enough
Exactly.
to go through all of this and compete?
Why is it that your block doesn't have 7 capable people willing and able to run? I'm sure you could find them if you wanted to, but why don't you reach out and empower those people to push and fight and bite and scratch and claw to do good things? Why can't you do the same? And it's never in my mind been about, well, they have something that no one else. No. If you put forth 100% effort, you can achieve, you can aspire, you can do great things. And I truly and wholeheartedly believe that the greatest days of Eve, the greatest days in New Eden, are not behind us, because there's people out there, a lot of them like me, who believe that.
Awesome point. And at risk of going over time, because somebody just asked a question that is like really good, uh, do you feel that this war has been healthy for Eve or good for Eve?
Wars, in some, see, that's a philosophical question that we could go on for the
Not
next
wars in
2
general,
hours.
this war
This
in
war,
particular.
this war, the
Like,
way
judge it
it's
in the
been
moment.
executed in the moment, in my perception, I come from the army world. You take aggressive action. In the absence of orders, you take aggressive action and you move forward on the objective. That's just how my mind works.
You
I
feel it's
think
been
that the
good for the
war
game,
was a
though.
good thing. The war itself, I really don't know enough to say, because we haven't seen the fallout of it yet. We haven't seen where all the dice will fall. We haven't seen where the cards will settle. No one knows when or how this will end. And in some ways, I say that is a good thing, because it's going to lead to another Empires of Eve book, which is good publicity for CCP, which is going to bring us a new stock of players, which is going to be healthy for the game environment as a whole.
I'm sure Andrew at least appreciates it, if no one else does. Keeping. Never mind. That's a whole nother topic. Andrew Groen's the author of The Empires of Eve, for those of you who didn't get the reference. Also, one last thing. Thoth puts out a quote that I wanted to pose to you, which is, I'm not here to improve the game. I'm here to improve your game.
That's honestly, it's not far from the truth with the way I believe in things.
Not a terrible moniker to take on, because it helps like really shove home the fact that that other moniker is no longer the way you guys live by. But anywho, if you have nothing else, it's been a great time talking to you.
Just a final thought to everyone. Eve is what you make of it. Get out there and do something. Join a group. Make your own mark. That's what sandboxes are good for.
I definitely agree with that. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out and talking and sharing your views and giving that interview. And I believe that it is very much true that if people are interested in, the new player experience, there are many candidates that expound new player experience, but I don't believe that any of them do it quite at the same scale that Broodin does. And this is coming from one of the people who do it at a lower scale. So, and as a person that does do that, I can say that, like, I can definitely respect having you as a representative and how we'd want you to be in there as early as possible, um, to help with things like the agency and all that kind of stuff. Uh, you One of the issues that I have with older players that try to help new bros that aren't working with new bros, or like trying to represent how to teach new bros that don't actually work with new bros day in and day out, is that like new bros pick up on the new stuff because they don't have any reason to think that they're learning anything new. They're just learning what they're learning. And as new features come out, they can become more and more disconnected. So we need people who are in the thick of things, relearning the game every time CCP puts out patches, to continue to find good ways to do things and address the problems that our new bros are having. So I think that's a solid reason to vote for you. I look forward to watching your campaign. I think wish you the best of luck, and I definitely need you to hang out in our stay in the Eve community. Either way, because I think that you are incredibly valuable in or out of the CSM, and agree that you could be effective as a CSM.
Kind words. I'll try to live up to them. Thank you.
And with that, if that's it, then thank you for coming. Have a good one.
Yes, sir. Have a good night.